The first time I realized I wasn't part of this family was at age 7, when I found my birthday cake in the trash. Not eaten, not even cut. Just dumped whole beside coffee grounds and eggshells. The frosting had melted slightly in the summer, heat blurring the words, "Happy Birthday, Ethan," into a pink smear. Upstairs, the TV blared highlights from Trevor's Little League victory party, the one they'd thrown instead of mine. Mom had forgotten to bring my cake. Again. When I walked into the kitchen, her hands were dusted with flour as she rolled out dough for Trevor's favorite sourdough. "Oops," she said, barely glancing at me. "We'll get you cupcakes tomorrow." Tomorrow came. So did the next birthday. The cupcakes never did. I grew up in the shadow of Trevor James Montgomery III, named after our father and grandfather, while I got Ethan because Mom liked how it sounded that one time. Trevor played varsity tennis. I taught myself chess. In the library. Trevor brought home trophies. I brought home strays, the only creatures who ever looked at me like I mattered. The Montgomery name was a crown Trevor wore effortlessly, while it slipped off me like a hand-me-down coat. Dad's colleagues would clap Trevor on the back and ask about his future-in-law, then blink at me like I'd materialized out of nowhere. "And you're the quiet one, eh?" The trust fund was Grandma Eleanor's last act of defiance. $250,000 per grandchild, locked until college, her lawyer announced at the reading. Mom's smile looked like it hurt. Mine vanished sophomore year of high school. Dad called me into his study, the air thick with scotch and something sharper. Shame, maybe, if he'd been capable of it. "Emergency house repairs," he muttered, swirling his glass. I nodded like the ghost they'd trained me to be. But that night, I rifled through Trevor's BMW and found the receipt in the glove box. Deposit, Columbia Law School. $247,600. The numbers seared into me. Roof repairs. Right. The night before Trevor's first semester, our parents threw him a dinner at the Pierre. "It's for people who understand the legal world," Mom explained, while I fixed her iPad. Again. I watched them leave, Trevor's laugh echoing through the foyer. Then I took 3 things. The password to Trevor's, "La Hub account, Trevle 2024, scribbled on a post-it. Dad's keys to the country club, dangling like an invitation. And every ounce of guilt I'd ever felt about being the disappointment. For 4 years, I watched Trevor float through law school on my stolen future. While he partied with senators' sons, I worked construction, my hands raw and blistered. While he summered at Sullivan and Cromwell, I slept in my truck, counting the days until the bar exam. And every night, I added another brick to the wall I'd tear down. Photos of Trevor buying Adderall from his torts professor's TA, security footage of him doing lines in the country club men's room, right next to the ethics committee chair, screenshots of him bragging about bribing a clerk for exam answers. All saved. All anonymous. The bar exam results dropped at 6:03 a.m. on a Tuesday. I knew before anyone. Trevor's name wasn't on the pass list. Not because he failed. Because someone had sent the committee a 200-page PDF of his greatest hits. The Montgomery. Family lawyer called it career ending. Dad's first stroke hit when the disciplinary hearing notice arrived. Mom showed up at my apartment last week. Her first visit in a decade. Her Chanel suit was wrinkled from the bus ride. "How could you?" she whispered, like I'd kicked a puppy instead of nuking their golden boy's future. I handed her an envelope. Inside, a receipt for my GED, 120, my community college transcripts, 4.0 GPA, and an acceptance letter to Columbia Law. Funny how life works, I said, adjusting the 120. No 8, 0. Suit I'd bought with the whistleblower reward. Turns out I do understand the legal world. As the door closed, I heard something I'd waited 26 years for. "Ethan James, you come back here, right?" James, not Montgomery. My middle name. The one Grandma gave me in her will. The one they'd ignored at her funeral. The one now on every legal document that would rebuild everything they'd stolen. Some people inherit money, some inherit houses. I inherited the quiet, unshakable knowledge that every ounce of power they'd ever had over me was borrowed. And today, the debt came due. The disciplinary hearing was held on a Thursday. I wore the same suit I'd worn to Grandma's funeral, the only time they'd ever bothered to dress me like a Montgomery. Trevor didn't look at me once. Not when the committee read the charges. Not when they played the security footage of him snorting cocaine off a casebook in the country club bathroom. Not even when they revoked his eligibility to ever sit for the bar again. Dad's second stroke hit in the parking lot. The doctors called. It stress-induced. I called it poetic justice. For 26 years, I'd been the ghost in their mansion, the glitch in their perfect family portrait. Now, as I sat in the hospital waiting room, ignored again, I listened to Mom sob into her hands. Not because Dad might die, because Trevor's future was gone. I don't understand, she kept whispering. Who would do this? I almost laughed. Trevor moved back home after the hearing. His BMW got repossessed the next week. I know because I watched the tow truck haul it away from my construction site across the street. He stood in the driveway in sweatpants, screaming at the driver like it was his fault. Some habits die hard. I started Columbia that fall, the financial aid office had questions about my sudden tuition payment. $82,000 in cash, drawn from a whistleblower reward account. I handed them a letter from the Bar Association. They stopped asking. My first day, I walked past Trevor's old dorm. His roommate, some trust fund kid named Preston, did a double take. Holy shit, he muttered. You're the brother. I smiled. Ethan James, not Montgomery. Never again. Mom called me for the first time in November. Dad was out of rehab. They were selling the house. We need to talk, she said, like I owed her anything. I met her at a diner near campus. She looked smaller somehow, her Chanel replaced by a Kohl's sweater. Why? She asked. Just that. I stirred my coffee. You remember my 8th birthday? She blinked. The one where you promised cupcakes. I slid a photo across the table. 7-year-old me, alone at the kitchen table with a store-bought muffin and a single candle. You forgot that too. Her mouth opened, closed. Some debts aren't paid with money. The snow was falling in thick, silent waves the first time Trevor showed up at my dorm. I just finished outlining a torts case when the pounding started, fists hammering against my door hard enough to rattle the frame. Open the fucking door. Ethan! His voice was raw, ragged at the edges, like he'd been screaming for hours. I took my time, sipped my coffee, adjusted the cufflinks on my dress shirt, real silver, not the plated crap Trevor used to wear. When I finally turned the knob, he nearly fell into the room. He looked like hell. The golden boy of the Montgomery family stood swaying in my doorway, his once perfect hair greasy and unkempt, his designer stubble grown into a patchy beard. The stench of cheap whiskey rolled off him in waves. You did this, he slurred, jabbing a finger at my chest. You ruined my fucking life. I stepped aside to let him stumble past me, then closed the door softly. The contrast would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Me in my tailored suit, him in sweatpants stained with what smelled like vomit. Actually, I said, moving to my desk, you ruined your life. I just provided the evidence. The bottle in his hand shattered against the wall beside my head. Glass rained down on my casebooks. Whiskey soaked into my Persian rug, the one I'd bought with the first installment of my whistleblower reward. You stole my money! Spittle flew from his cracked lips. That trust fund was mine. I didn't flinch, didn't raise my voice, just opened my laptop and turned the screen toward him. Let's review, I said calmly. The video played automatically. There he was, Trevor James Montgomery III, future Supreme Court Justice, snorting lines off a toilet tank in the country club. Bathroom. The timestamp read 3:17 a.m., 2 nights before his criminal law final. His face went gray. That's not... Keep watching. The footage cut to him handing cash to a teaching assistant. Then to him bragging in a Law Hub chat about buying exam answers. Then to the pièce de résistance, him fucking his evidence professor in a library study carol. I closed the laptop. The trust fund was never yours, I said. Just like Columbia was never yours. Just like the bar was never yours. He lunged at me then, all drunken rage and flailing limbs. I sidestepped easily. He crashed into my bookshelf, sending casebooks tumbling to the floor. You little shit! He screamed, scrambling to his knees. I'll kill you! The door opened. Everything okay here? Campus security filled the doorway. 2 burly officers. Responding to the noise complaint I'd discreetly filed 15 minutes earlier. Trevor froze. I adjusted my tie. My brother was just leaving. They hauled him out, still screaming threats. I watched from my window as they escorted him across the quad, his flailing silhouette growing smaller in the snow. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You'll pay for this. I smiled. I already have, I typed back. 26 years of installments. Then I blocked the number and turned back to my studies. The letter arrived on the anniversary of Grandma Eleanor's death. Thick ivory paper, crisp black ink. The Montgomery family crest embossed in the corner, a relic of a bygone era when the name still meant something. I almost threw it out unopened, but something made me slit the envelope with my letter opener. The silver one I'd bought to replace the plastic junk from my childhood. Inside was a single sentence. The house is yours. No signature. No explanation. Just those 4 words in Dad's shaky handwriting. The strokes uneven, the letters trembling like his hands after the strokes. I drove out to the estate that afternoon. The gates hung open, rusted at the hinges. The lawn, once meticulously manicured, was overgrown with weeds. And the house itself. The house was empty. No furniture, no family portraits, no trace of the Montgomerys, except the faint outline of Trevor's trophies on the dusty shelves. I walked from room to room, my footsteps echoing through the hollowed-out shell of my childhood. The kitchen where I'd found my discarded birthday cake. The study where Dad had lied about the trust fund. The foyer where Mom had adjusted Trevor's tie before his law school interview, while I stood forgotten in the corner. Upstairs, in what had been Trevor's room, I found a single remaining item, a Little League trophy from the championship he'd won on my 7th birthday. I picked it up, examined my warped reflection in the tarnished brass. Then I dropped it. The sound of shattering metal echoed through the empty house. In the silence that followed, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd saved years ago, but never used. Grandma's. Lawyer! It's done, I said when he answered. A pause. Then, shall I begin the paperwork to transfer the deed? I took one last look around. At the peeling wallpaper, the water-stained ceilings, the cracks in the foundation. No amount of stolen money could fix. No, I said. List it for sale. I hung up and walked out, leaving the door unlocked behind me. Some people inherit money. Some inherit houses. I inherited something far more valuable. The power to walk away. The engine of my BMW purred to life. Not Trevor's hand-me-down. Not Dad's cast-off. Mine. As I drove down the winding driveway for the last time, the sun broke through the clouds, glinting off the EJ monogram on my cufflinks. Ethan James. Not Montgomery. Never again. The end.